Hello and good day. In this video, I'm going to share with you again how to copy data from another workbook or worksheet. But in this one, we are going to copy a specific column from another workbook. So that is different compared to what we did last time. If we will copy just the whole worksheet data, it should be easy. But if you want to copy just a specific column, then we need to implement something. In this tool, we are going to use UserForm as well. I will introduce to you how you can use UserForm and then list box. And yeah, I guess we should just start it so you can see what we're going to do in this one. So let me start by opening an Excel file, and then again, let's start by saving it to our prepared file name. I will name this one. Make sure to select your uh, prepared folder. I will name this one. This is our CF3. It's our third video. Copy specific column from another workbook. You can name that differently if you want a shorter one, and then make sure that you save it as .xlsm uh, file type, and then make sure to hit the save button. And now let's make this tool first. Let's rename this worksheet. Let's name it data, similar to the previous one. And then let's make the row one as our tool header. Let's start by adding a button in here that we will click later. All right. And let's just put a value here for copy data. And let's just give it a nicer look. That should be enough for now. And then we'll also select arrange in here. Let's select until columns A, and then control shift arrow down from your keyboard. Let's name this range clear data. So later we can easily clear that range value. Alright, now let's start our coding. So Alt F11 from your keyboard, that will show our VBA editor. And let me just put that a little, so that you can also see our current workbook. So let's start by adding, wait, let me just close this one so you'll not get confused because it's opening to our project explorer. So now let's start by adding a new module in here. Let's name this one VBA copy data still. And let's start with creating a new procedure. Let's name it sub copy data. All right. And now let's declare our current workbook. So that will be TWB as workbook, not worksheet. It should be workbook. And then let's set it to our this workbook. Let's also declare our worksheet, which is our data. So let's name that data sh as worksheet. And then let's set that data sh is equals to this workbook that sheets data. Again, twb is the variable that represent our workbook. Now that we have that, we can declare our next variable, which is the target workbook, where we will copy data from. So let's name it dim swb or source workbook, but we cannot set it yet because we need to know the path of that workbook first. So we're going to declare here an spath variable, and it should be of type string. It will hold the path of the target workbook. And to get the path of our target workbook, we need to have an option for us to select the file. So to do that, let's say spath is equals to Application.GetOpenFileName. Using this, it will allow us to select a file so that we can also get the path of that file. And again, if you don't remember how this works, let me just try to run this. And this will show up and it will give you an option to select the file that you want to copy data from. When you hit open, it will save the path of that file to our variable spath. Alright, and I did not show it last time. You know what will happen if you click cancel on this? Right now we don't see anything, but just to give you an idea, let's say let's debug that print spat. what will happen if we click cancel from that option? It will show false. And this is a string, it's not a boolean. It was automatically converted to string because our spat where we assign it is equals to string. So we need to make sure that there is a selected file before we proceed to the next step. So to do that, we just need to add a condition that if spat is not equals to false, then let's say for example this one, let's debug the path of the file if it's not equals to false. So let's try this. Let's run. Let's select a file. Let's open. And now you see that the file path is printed. And if we don't select a file, let's for example, we hit cancel, you will see that there's no printed on the screen. So let's just add a comment here that proceed to the next step. Alright, now let's assign the workbook or the target workbook to our SWB variable since we already have the path. So to do that, let's say set SWB is equals to workbooks that open spat, right? So we have now our source workbook. And what will happen after this line execute? It will open the target workbook. And then now we can also set our target worksheet. So let's declare another variable in here. Let's call it finance sh as worksheet because that's the name of. Let's try to open it maybe so I can show you why I name it finance sh. Alright, it's now open and you can see that the name of the worksheet is finance. So this should be the best name for that worksheet. Now let's set that variable equals to source workbook dot sheets finance. Alright, now we have declared all the variable that we needed in order to manipulate this to workbook. So the next thing that I wanted to happen is that I want to have an option that will show me all the available column from this worksheet and I want it to be shown by a user form. So now let's leave this code for the meantime and let's add a user form to our code. So to do that, make sure that you are on the current project we're working on. In this case, you see there are two projects in here, one for our tool and one for the financial sample. So make sure that you right click from here and then insert user form. Alright, and then there's a toolbox in here. Now before we add anything in our user form, it's always a best practice to name our user form first. I will name it select column. And then as you can see, there's a title in here. We can modify that by going into the caption property. Let's name that select column as well. Now it was updated. Now what I'm going to happen is I want to add a list box in here. So if you go to your toolbox, look for the list box like this. And again, every time you add a control like user form and anything from here, it's always a best practice that you name that control so it won't be hard to identify that on the coding part. Let's call this LST columns. Right, let's change the other attributes later, properties. Now I want to load here all the available columns from our target worksheet. So to do that, let's go back to our module, to our code. Since we already know what's the worksheet, and we can assure that the header is always at row 1, it contains all the column that we have. What I'm going to do next is I want to know what's the last column from this data because we want to make our code flexible, assuming that there will someday there will be additional data and still we want to make sure that our code can still capture those additional column. So to do that, I will need to know what's the last column in this header. So put a comment, get the last header column index. We're going to get the index, not the column letter. So we're going to declare a variable, let's say f last col, finance last column. It should be long. And then let's say f last call is equals to, we have the workbook, we have the workbook, which is swb. The No, I think we should start with finance sh. Finance sh, that we cannot use range, so we will be using cells when finding the last column. The row index should be always equals to 1, so we can put a static value there, and then here we can say columns that count and that end, and this time it should be excel to left, and that column. Right, now we know what's the last column. But before we proceed, I want to test this if it's working or not. So let's put the debug.print in here, and let's put that variable. Let me save this first and run it. I will select the same file and hit open, and you can see that the last column printed here is 16. So to verify that, I will just select all the column, and you will see that on the count here we have a total of 16. Once we get that, we can now start creating a loop. So let's use a counter variable a. Let's say for a is equals to 1, because the first column is in cell 1, and then to f last call. So whatever the last column captured in here. And what we're going to do is that we'll declare a variable. Let's name it column name as string, and it should be equals to finance sh that cells 1, and then whatever the value of our counter variable, which is a, and let's set that to value. And every time we get or we capture a column, we will add that to our user form list box. To do that, we'll just need to say frm that ls the columns that add item call name. Now after this loop, let's put a comment here. Right after this loop, what we want to happen is to show our user form. So that is frm selection that, no, that not that scroll, it should be that show. And let's see what will happen after we try this code. We select the file, and now you can see that we have here now all the column of this worksheet from segment until year. So now we can select columns, but by default it's only single selection. So we need to update this into multi-select property. And to do that, you just need to activate that control. Go to the property, look for the multi-select property, and make sure to set it to multi. Now we'll test our code again. Let's run from here, and then we select the same file. Now we have the same column list, and now we are allowed to select multiple columns. So now what I want to happen is I need to have a button in here that once I click it, all the selected column name in here should be copied from this workbook going to my tool. So yep, let's continue our code. Let's go back to our user form. Let's add a button in here. This is the command button. Let's name this generate data or copy data. No, it's a name. So let's name this one CMD copy data. And then on the caption, let's name it just copy data. And now we can start the coding from here. We've done with our module. Now we can continue the code in our user form, since at the end of this code, it will show our user form. So we have now the copy data in here. Alright, so in here I have to access our all the variables that I declare, And since I declare them inside the module, I won't be able to access them unless I declare it again. And I don't want to write the same line of code. So in order to access it without copying it, I need to go to my module and then uh, place this variable declaration outside of the procedure and then replace them with public so that I can access it from other user form or from other module and other procedure. Let's do that in all our workbook variables, workbook and worksheet variables, and then swb. The path, we don't need to make that public. That's no longer needed on the other function. And then we also need our finance sh in here. And I guess the last call should be declared as public outside the procedure as well. Alright, okay, I think we have this looking good. Now let's go back to our select column. So what should happen here next? Okay, first I want to test if I can debug that print or print in immediate window all the selected column name before I proceed to the next step, just to make sure that I'm doing it right. So to do that, we're going to create a loop and I will use the counter variable a again. Let's say for a is equals to 0 because the item index when it comes to list box starts at 0. So we need to start the variable or the loop counter to 0 and it should be for a is equals to 0 to lst columns that count or that list count minus 1 because again uh, index start at 0 so we need to minus 1 so that it will only loop until the last available items. And then I want to say that if lst column that selected a, then let's just debug that print the column name. It will be lst columns dot list arg index should be a and the column should be 0. Now let's see if this will work. Okay, maybe I should put the code in here. So let's map the code in here. We will assign here our copy data. Hit OK. Now once we click that, it will show. Let's select the file. Now I will try to select the segment sales and year. And let's see if once I click copy data, it will be printed in our immediate data. Okay, segment sales and year. It was copied successfully. Now I know that this is working. So the next thing that we want to do is maybe the first thing should be to make sure that the data where we will paste the data is clear before we start copying column. So let's say mm, this is data sh that range clear data that clear, and then we will loop into the list box, and if there's if the item is selected, we will be needing a variable here column name a string, and then we'll assign the selected column in that variable, so that will be columns that list a 0. And then the next step is we need to know what is the index number of this column from the target worksheet. So for example, if the selected is segment, it should be 1. If country, it should be 2. So we're going to have another loop in here. I'll just put a comment so that you can easily identify this next part. It'll say for b is equals to 1 to a plus call. We have that variable declared in our module, and I set it to public so we can access it from here. Then next b, and let's say if finance sh that sells 1b, that value is equals to call name, then what will happen? I guess we also need another variable here. Let's name this column index as long, and by default it should be equals to 0. So if the selected column was found based on the selected uh, if the column is found based in the selected column name, we're going to assign the index of that column into our column index variable by using the counter, and then of course we use exit for. And then after that, let's validate if there's a column found or column index found. We just only need to use a condition that if call index is greater than 0, meaning there's an index. So we put the code inside this block. So the next thing that we want to happen is to copy that column. And to do that, let's say finance. Okay, sorry. We know the index. Now we want to know what's the last row with value on that column. So for example, the index is 2 or column B. The next step is we want to know what's the last row with value on this column so that once we copy it, we know from what we can identify the range that we should copy. Okay, so get the last row of the selected column. To do that, we need to declare another variable. Let's say dim call last row as long, and then call last row is equals to finance sh that cells. We will be using cells again because we don't have the column name, so we cannot use that range. So the row index is, it will be cells 1, and then the column index, which is the variable that we have in here, so it will be call index, and then the column index here should be cells again. Row index should be the last row. Oh wait, what I am doing? I'm sorry, I'm doing it right. I'm doing it wrong. Let me try it again. Delete, 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 delete. Okay, I think it's a different thing. So again, to set the last row, let's just say um finance sh that cells, say rows that count based on the column index, that and xlab that row. All right, now we can copy the range because we know now the column index and what's the last row of that column. So to do that, let's say finance sh that cells, because this is what I'm doing earlier. We cannot use that range because we don't have the column name like A, B, C. We just only have the column index. So we need to create the range in a different way using that cells. So let's start with the start of the range. Okay, so maybe you're getting confused of what I'm trying to do in here. This will be similar to like this. It will be finance sh that range A1 or B1. For example, we're targeting column B and we need until 100 that um, copy. So since we don't have this B variable, we don't have this column name B. We need to do it on the cell way. So to do that, we need to use finance sh, that's cells. This will be cells, row index is 1, and then the call index. And then the column index should be cells, row index is the last row, and then again the call index. That choppy. Alright, so that's how we convert this value from this way into this way. It's just a little longer. So now I remove this. Once we copy it, what we're going what we're going to do next is activate the TWB or our this workbook. So we just need to say TWB, or instead of activating the workbook, we can directly activate our worksheet by saying data sh.activate, and then from there we need to select the cell where we're going to paste the data. So I guess we also need to have a counter variable in here, because on the first column that we will copy, we will paste it to, of course, column 1. But how we will know that the next item should be pasted in column 2, 3, 4, and so on. So I will declare here a variable, the data counter as long, and then let's give it the default value by using colon data ctrs equals to 1, because by default we want to paste the first column into our column 1. Alright, so we say data sh that activate, and then let's say data sh that cells data ctr. Oh no, column should be 2, and it should be the data ctr that paste paste. Oh, why it's not allowing me that select. Why there's no paste special? Okay, there's a paste special. I thought it's not valid, but yeah, this is what should happen. And then of course, every time we copy an index, we need to increment our data ctr variable, so that on the next column to be copied, it should goes to the next counter, which is column number 2. So I want to try this first before we proceed further. Let me just make sure it was saved, and then I will just copy one column to see if it will work. So let's copy data again. Let's select the file. Now this will show up, and I just want to select the COGCS, which is this column. Let's copy the data, and I have a debug that mismatch. Alright, so let's inspect what happened in here. Okay, this is column index. We want to copy this range. Cells 1 column index is 11. So it's like what's the column of CGS? It's like K1 to K701. Maybe I should use that select first. Let's say instead of doing copy, let's use that select first, and then after that we copy. Let's try. So okay, there's still a type mismatch. All right, let me just check if I am okay. The variable is correct for finance. My issue is it's saying that Data type mismatch. What's the data type mismatch in here? Okay, let me stop it from here and let me try to debug this. Can't be selected. Okay, I think what's wrong in here is maybe we should use range in here instead of that cells, and then we say that select, and then here instead of typing this complete line we can say selection that copy. Alright, now I will try this again by going into the tool and make sure to save our code first. Go to our tool, copy data, and then we should select this one, and then I will select COGCS again, copy data, and it was copied in my workbook. Okay, now we just need to expand this column to see the value. So it's working. Now I want to try copying multiple data. So let's say we want the month, the sales, and the year. We copy. Oops, I have. Oh, okay. I forgot. So every time we copy data, remember that we activate our data sh, but in copying new data or in another column, we need to go back to the target workbook, which is this one. So we need to say here the finance sh that activate so that it will go back to the uh, target workbook. And then after this loop, what I'm going to happen is just to put a message box that data copied successfully. And let's put information icon on that. Let's BB OK only button. And then let's put a title to our message box. And it should be end, or the user form should begin after we click the message box. And also we need to close our target workbook. So let's say the workbook that close and then false because we don't want to save any changes. And also we need to make sure that the application that cat copy mode is equals to false. So now let's save this. Let's close this file first, and then let's go back to our tool. Let's select the file. Now we can select the columns that we want to copy. We copy data. Okay, I think I closed the wrong one. Okay, let me close this one again, and yeah, let's go back in here. I think I closed this workbook instead of source workbook. I get confused sometimes. Okay, let's go back in here and let's check. Yes, I can close the the target workbook, which should be this source workbook. Now let's try it again. Let's copy data. Oops, where are we now? Select the financial sample, and then let's select a specific column. And now you can see it's copying all the data that we selected, and the selected file is now closed. So it's almost the tool already. What I'm just going to do is I just add some color in here, and I also want to have another button that will clear the selection in the list box. So let's call this CMD clear, and let's just name it clear. And let's put a color in our tool. Maybe we can set the back color into this color, and then our button could be something like that. And the clear should be something like this. And let's go the clear button. What I want to happen here is that lst columns that multi-select is equals to multi-single, and lst columns that value is equals to null, and then I will return it to multi-select multi. So and now save that, and let's go ahead and test our tool again. Let's go back in here, copy data, and then select the file. And now you can see that I have my user form with the color now. Then let's test our clear. It's working. It's removing all the selected column once I click it. Now let's try to copy some data and copy data. Alright, now we have the tool created with our message box. So I guess this will be helpful if you are, working with multiple worksheets and you want to combine into just one worksheet, and you want to have a way where you can just, select file and select column so that you don't need to copy it manually, and you can ensure that all the data has been copied successfully like this one. Alright, so I hope that you learned something from this video. Again, if you have any question or inquiry, please make sure to put that on the comment section. I said description on the previous one, and you can also email me on the description, and you can download the same data that I use in here if you want to do, or if you want to follow the coding with me. So again, thank you for watching and see you on the next one.